Hello and welcome to another episode of Damn Interesting Week. We are so glad you've decided to join us. My name is Jennifer Lee Noonan.
I'm Angela Epley.
I'm Spurr-Chen.
I'm Bradley Calhoun.
And this was a damn interesting week. So let's get started with our first link.
First link.
Okay, from Science News. Spider silk making organs evolved due to a 400 million year old genetic oops.
Is that a scientific term?
It's a headline term.
Right.
I can give you that at least. So scientists are now thinking that spiders' ability to spin webs may be one consequence of a really big genetic mistake, which, I've been doing improv for a long time. Mistakes are just opportunities in disguise. Am I right?
Sure.
So true.
The spiders were yes-anding their cloacas.
But a close look at the genetics and development of spinnerets, specifically, those are the spider's silk-making organs. It reveals that an early arachnid ancestor doubled all of its DNA around hundreds of millions of years ago. And this is important because these have been really elusive for scientists for a long time. So scientists analyzed the full genetic instruction books of two spider species and something called a whip scorpion. No thanks. Anyway, they compared these genomes to those of other arachnid groups, and they found evidence that around 400 million years ago, an early ancestor of the group that gave rise to spiders and whip scorpions experienced a massive mutation that duplicated its entire genome. And one gene pair is called abdominal A, which through a series of genetic and developmental experiments on spider embryos, they determined it was heavily involved in the formation of spinnerets from protolimbs. They found this out because inactivating the gene made embryos lose their spinnerets. So it also appears that each gene copy evolved different roles after the duplication, so they effectively work together to create spinnerets. Now, whole genome duplication is something we do see in plant evolution, but it's considerably rarer in the animal kingdom. And what they're thinking is that this process may have created a massive upswing in genomic real estate. This kind of behavior has also been associated with major evolutionary changes like boosting the diversity of jawed vertebrate body plans. So who knows what'll happen when we copy and paste the entire human genome and what we can spawn from that.
Yeah, I mean, it feels a little bit like the whole you ate your twin in the womb and there's actually secretly still inside you the whole time.
A little bit. Yeah, maybe we'll get some like real life Venture Brothers action after this or something.
Or just spinnerets. I mean, if I could weave a web, that might be interesting.
We already have a template in popular literature.
Right.
All right, next link.
Next link.
This article comes to us from Knowable Magazine, and it's titled Recreating the Smells of History.
Ooh.
Why?
It doesn't sound pleasant.
They're not going to be good
Some of them
smells.
have to be good.
I mean, the smells as they smelled at the time you would have originally smelt them.
Yeah, I don't think
If
the
that
Middle
makes
Ages
sense.
smelled
still
good.
not winning me.
Okay, fair,
Still not
fair.
winning me.
There were some okay smells, like,
Right,
say,
probably.
old libraries, for
right.
instance.
As long as they weren't written on like human skin.
No comment. No, I doubt it. But there is also like mummies and battlefields, so yeah, it's not all good smells. But, we often learn about the past visually through oil paintings and sepia photographs, and sometimes we get to touch historical objects or listen to recordings, but rarely do we use our sense of smell to experience the distant past. As lead scientist of the Heritage Science Laboratory in Slovenia, analytical chemist Matthias Slić has focused on the preservation and reconstruction of culturally significant scents. Reconstructed scents can enhance museum and gallery exhibits, says Inger Leemans, a cultural historian at the Royal Netherlands Academy of Arts and Sciences. Despite their potential to enrich our understanding of history and art, though, smells are rarely conserved with the same care as buildings or archaeological artifacts.
It's like trying to save a fart in a jar.
Yeah, I feel like, well, yeah, you can't preserve them because they're organic, and, that's kind of the whole deal. But some projects do aim to safeguard a beloved smell before it disappears. When the library in London's St. Paul's Cathedral was scheduled for renovation, for example, Spurr-Chen and his UCL colleague Cecilia Bembibre set about documenting the historic library's distinct smell. The team first analyzed the chemicals wafting from the collection, which includes books dating back to the 12th century. To whittle down the list of compounds identified by these mass spectrometers to the ones that humans can actually smell, the researchers next invited 7 untrained sniffers into the cathedral library and asked them to describe its smell using a list of 21 adjectives commonly used to describe the compounds. Spurr-Chen and colleagues next matched the qualitative descriptors the sniffers had selected with their underlying chemical compounds to create a chemical recipe for the scent of the cathedral's library. These recipes are published in scientific journals, so a chemist could theoretically whip up the smell of old books centuries from now, even if in the future people could no longer go to a library or no longer read physical books and only receive all information digitally, says Spurr-Chen. God forbid.
Right. That's a real positive look on the future. Hey, you can smell what a book used to smell like.
That's going to be, I'm going to save that book smell in a vial for my grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
But moving on, the work at St. Paul's Cathedral, which ended in 2016, suggested that it might be possible to capture far older scents, including smells from thousands of years ago. For a study published in 2025, Spurr-Chen was joined by scientists from Egypt, Slovenia, Poland, and the United Kingdom to study 9 ancient Egyptian mummies. The aim was to learn about the mummification process and recreate a scent that will be available to visitors of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo from 2026 onward. For example, the team identified embalming ingredients like conifer oils, frankincense, myrrh, and cinnamon, as well as more modern compounds such as synthetic pesticides and plant-based pest oils, which museums have used to preserve the mummies, often without documentation. The team also intends to apply its findings to create what amounts to a mummy perfume for the Egyptian Museum. And now you can go on your hot date and be like, wow, is that 1000 BC, right. I don't know, Tutankhamun, whatever, I don't know the eras.
Is that ode a rotting corpse I smell?
Yeah. Well-preserved rotting corpse.
Right. Not decaying.
Yeah. So, while old artifacts offer a convenient starting point for olfactory analysis, many historical smells have not been preserved in physical form. To recreate them, researchers must rely on archival documents and a certain amount of creative interpretation. That's what a European olfactory heritage project called Ode Europa did for a number of historical events, sites, and even ideas, including the scent of Christian hell, as described in 16th century sermons, including notes of sulfur and brimstone, and a whiff of, quote, a million dead dogs.
Oh, cool.
Dang.
All right.
Yeah, ethically sourced.
You need a million?
Sure.
I think 1,000, or I think 2 is probably.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a roll off the farther away you get. You're not smelling that millionth dog.
To reconstruct these complex historic smellscapes, Lehmans and her colleagues scoured old document archives and images for any related smell references. She says, we search for nose witnesses, but we also look at the components of that smellscape, such as architectural descriptions listing building materials. And to accelerate the work, Ode Europa has created an AI-driven database of more than 2.5 million historical smell references, and you can just go check that out. That's available online right now. It's explorer.odeeuropa.eu. Yeah, it's extremely punny. Art historian Christina Bradstreet from the Association for Art History in the UK says, scent sparks memories and gets people talking about and in front of paintings, which is what I want. When in 2022, the Prado Museum in Madrid created 10 scents to accompany Jean Bruegel the Elder's painting The Sense of Smell, visitors lingered in front of the painting for 13 minutes compared to the average 32 seconds, which pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So museums and galleries worldwide are taking note and increasingly integrating scent into their exhibitions. This attracts new visitors and engages them in a different way.
Now, if only they can perfect the scent of donate money to the museum and then...
Yes. Next link.
Next link.
This comes from Phys.org. People are swayed by AI-generated videos even when they know they're fake.
Oh.
All right. I was feeling a little positive about humanity there for a second, but no, this is good.
Yeah, right. And it's getting really pervasive and getting really good, right? Long gone are the days of the spaghetti Will Smith.
Sorry. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one who remembers that. That video was hilarious to me at the time.
But now they're really good. And if you've been on social media, you also know how pervasive they are. So according to Simon Clark, the co-author of the paper, most of the public and policy discussion about deepfakes assumes that the main problem is deception. The dominant response has therefore been transparency. From a psychological perspective, though, that assumption is not well supported. There have been past psychological studies suggesting that people can be influenced by information they are presented with, even when they know it's false, unreliable, or irrelevant. So Clark and his colleague Stefan it's a PH, Ludanowski, wondered whether this pattern also applies to the deepfake videos people watch online. They carried out 3 online experiments involving 175, 275, 223 participants. They were then asked to watch a short video that showed a person admitting that they had committing a crime or a moral transgression. Some of the videos are real, others were AI-generated deepfakes. Crucially, in some conditions, participants were shown a warning stating that it had been identified and flagged as a deepfake, while other participants saw no warning or a generic warning about the existence of deepfakes. They also added a control condition in which participants watched a version of the video with all the relevant information obscured by background sounds. So after watching each of the videos, participants were asked whether they thought the video was fake and if they believed the person was guilty of the crime. Many participants acknowledged that a video was fake, but still judged the person in the video as guilty of a crime or transgression. It's kind of like that, who's that Game of Thrones actor who was really played the worst of worst people?
Joffrey, or I forget the actor's name. Yeah.
Yeah, and people assume that person is like that, right?
Yeah. His life is ruined because people keep coming up to him going, "You're a bad person."
Right, he's like, "No, I'm nice." Or like Biff Tannen, like that guy is actually a nice guy.
Yeah.
So we also showed that different types of warnings have different effects. Specific warnings referred to a particular video are more effective at convincing people that a video is fake, whereas generic warnings don't reliably do so. This has clear implications for regulation, where disclosure is often treated as a significant safeguard. It's just not.
Well, and it makes you wonder a little bit, like, how much of this is just a thing they already wanted to believe and in fact would have believed even if the video didn't exist at all, right?
Correct.
Like, are you just revealing the fact that they wanted to believe this type of person committed a crime and the video didn't do anything one way or the other?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of just goes on to say, I don't know. You know, in their next study, they're going to investigate whether the source and framing of the deepfake warnings influence their effectiveness. I'm going to guess the answer is no. Again, it's going to come... If that source was someone you already believed, then the answer will be yes, it will legitimize it. And if it's the other, then no, it'll just put you deeper into your thing. Okay. On that note, next link.
Next link.
All right. Well, y'all are just going to have to bear with me as I fangirl out a little bit because this next article is extremely my jam. It's from Tasting History with Max Miller, and it's called Did This Meal Kill Mozart?
Ooh.
Yeah. Now, to be clear, I don't care about food, but I very much care about the death of Mozart. I played the viola as a child. I've seen Amadeus probably 50 times.
Oh.
And while that story is fictional, it is perhaps slightly less fictional than some naysayers would have you believe. And Max Miller basically admits at the top of this video that the recipe here is tangential at best. What he really wants to do is talk about Mozart, because he's also an Amadeus superfan. We've gone full parasocial. It's fine. And so that's what he does. But as a quick aside, for those who do have functioning taste buds, the meal he's making here is a rye and cinnamon-crusted pork loin, which is from an 18th century Austrian collection called the Useful Cookbook. And there's no evidence that Mozart actually ate this dish, which is basically just a boiled hunk of pork with some breadcrumbs baked around the outside. But we do know that Mozart ate some kind of pork just a few weeks before he became extremely ill and died, because he wrote a letter to his wife describing a celebratory meal following a successful performance of the magic flute. And that has led some people to speculate that the root of his illness might have been trichinosis, which is, of course, caused by a parasite in undercooked pork.
If he was only Jewish.
Right, then he wouldn't have died. Yeah. And the symptoms do kind of match up with what his physician at the time described as Hitziges-Friesel fever, or severe miliary fever. And this wasn't a specific disease, but rather a descriptor of the fact that Mozart had, number one, a high fever, and number two, a rash that looked like small millet grains. And trichinosis does cause a rash, as well as swelling of the face, which Mozart did have significant swelling in his limbs, which continued even after he died. But a lot of other things caused those symptoms as well, and over the centuries, people have proposed no fewer than 136 diseases that it might have been, including tuberculosis, rheumatic fever, scarlet fever, and on and on. But aside from all the medical possibilities, the specific fact that his swelling got even worse after his body was already dead caused a lot of people, both then and now, to believe that he had been poisoned. Now, the movie Amadeus doesn't actually say that Mozart's rival composer Salieri poisoned him. There's just sort of a loose implication that he worked him into a psychological breakdown by commissioning this emotionally fraught funeral requiem, which was indeed the piece that Mozart was working on when he died.
Okay, so assassination by work assignment, basically.
Yeah, well, basically, like, Mozart's overbearing father had died, and he had this really, like, emotional entanglement with him, and he felt like the ghost of his father was actually the one commissioning the piece. Like, it was a whole thing in the movie. Anyway. And nowadays, the generally accepted understanding is that Salieri and Mozart were actually really good friends, and Salieri was super celebrated in his own time, so there was no jealousy on his part. But the fact is that these rumors about Salieri are not a modern invention. It was absolutely part of the narrative at the time among people who believed that Mozart had been poisoned, that Salieri had done it. And one of the reasons we know this is because Salieri himself actively tried to dispel those rumors. On his own deathbed in 1823, he told a pupil, quote, "I can assure you on my word of honor that there is no truth in that absurd rumor that I am supposed to have poisoned Mozart." But as his illness grew worse and his mind started to go, Salieri actually changed his tune and started claiming that he had in fact done it. Like, whether or not he was delusional, which he may have been, Salieri did confess to this crime. And it was documented by a number of people around him, including Beethoven's nephew, who wrote about it to Beethoven, and also Beethoven's secretary, Anton Schindler. In fact, the knowledge of Salieri's confession was so widespread that newspapers at the time were printing stories about it. But also, it seems like no one at the time actually believed him, with Schindler calling it a fantasy and the newspapers suggesting that it was just the ravings of a man who was losing touch with reality, which, again, certainly could be the case. But there's also some truth to the idea that Mozart's Requiem was being commissioned by a generous but aggressive anonymous benefactor who planned to take credit for it once Mozart died. The key is, it wasn't Salieri who was doing it. Instead, it was an Austrian nobleman called Franz von Walsegg, who wanted to be a composer but had figured out pretty quickly that he wasn't any good at it. So he had established a pattern where he would commission new works of music from famous composers, then pay them extra to keep quiet so that he could claim them as his own.
Wow.
And in 1791, Walsegg's wife died, so he needed to compose a requiem to honor her. Mozart, meanwhile, was desperate for money, so he took the commission, but he kept falling behind on it. And according to Mozart's wife, Walsegg's anonymous representative did come to Mozart several times and basically said, "I don't care if you're sick, I don't care if it costs more, I need this piece now." And even though the piece was unfinished when he died, Mozart's assistant Franz Sussmayer finished it and then delivered it for the final payment. And Walsegg claimed for about a year afterward that the piece was his. But both Franz and Mozart's wife knew the truth, so word got out, and Walsegg eventually admitted not just that Mozart had written the Requiem, but that basically all of his supposed compositions had been ghostwritten. So again, this is something where, yes, the movie took some liberties, but it's not completely fictional. And when it comes to Salieri, it's not a case of taking this nice friend of Mozart and maligning him with accusations, because Salieri himself said he did it. But, we'll never know for sure because we can't even be sure that Mozart was poisoned in the first place. It could quite possibly have been trichinosis, among other diseases. And on that note, Max Miller does strongly encourage everyone who is making this pork recipe to make sure that it is fully cooked. And there's a bunch of other stuff. If you're into Mozart, there's a bunch of little side stories about how cool Mozart was as a child. Aside from just there's a famous story about he heard a piece once and then just transcribed it so it was able to leave the Vatican, which was against the rules at the time. But there's also a story about how he hated the sound of trumpets, was genuinely afraid of them. And his father was like, don't be a wuss, and kept telling these friends of his who played the trumpet, like, play the trumpet at my son. And like Mozart would collapse on the floor screaming, and the trumpet players are like, we don't really like this. And his dad was like, do it again. And they say, like, even as an adult, Mozart never wrote a piece for the trumpet except once when he was 12. And they're basically like, his father made him do it. We're certain of it. So
wow.
I can't believe that guy was going to try to pass that off as his own, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
Mozart has such a unique style.
Right. Like, how could he possibly have thought he was going to get away with it? But, you know, then you also ask yourself, like, how do politicians and celebrities try to get away with not crediting their ghostwriters? You know, and you're like, we know you can't write this well. Stop it.
Yeah.
This is genuinely, as someone who has ghostwritten books for famous people, put the name on there. Because if you don't, I know this for a fact, you will get crap for it. Like, it's no longer a shameful thing to say, I had a professional help me with this. It's more of a shameful thing to be like, I'm going to pretend that I did this when everybody knows I didn't.
Yay, that's good, though. I'm glad that's changing, at least.
I mean, it's being seen as a legitimate thing as opposed to something like, well, everyone's got a book in them. Maybe, but not everybody can write. And there's plenty of things I can't do. Like, I'll hire somebody to play my basketball for me. And
we all hire people to play basketball for us.
Exactly. Next link.
Next link. Okay, we are going to stay in the gastro world with a BBC article, The Mushroom Making People Hallucinate Dozens of Tiny Humans.
Okay, have y'all seen the show Common Side Effects?
No.
Yes.
It's a new Mike Judge thing. And it's about a mushroom that does a lot of stuff, but fundamentally it makes you start to hallucinate tiny people. And when I saw this article, I was like, oh my God, Common Side Effects is real. Anyway, you should check out the show.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it may be this actual mushroom. Because to your point, these mushrooms are found in different parts of the world, but they give people the exact same visions, which is extremely uncommon. And they've only recently been described by science. So we're going to go to the Yunnan province of China to start this, because every year doctors at hospitals there brace themselves for an influx of people with an unusual complaint, specifically visions of pint-sized elf-like figures marching under doors, crawling up the walls, and clinging to furniture. It's like Elf on the Shelf, but year-round and maybe not connected to Santa.
Right.
But the hospital treats hundreds of these cases every year, and they all share a common culprit. Lawnmower asiatica. It's a type of mushroom that forms a symbiotic relationship with pine trees in nearby forests, and it's a locally popular food because it's known for its savory, umami-packed flavor. It's even sold in markets. It's served at home during peak mushroom season between June and August. The only catch? You have to cook it thoroughly, otherwise you're gonna hallucinate. Colin Domnauer, a doctoral candidate in biology at the University of Utah, this is what he said when he went to a restaurant in Yunnan. At a mushroom hot pot restaurant there, the server set a timer for 15 minutes and warned us, don't eat it until the timer goes off or you might see little people, which, I don't know. You know,
that's going to encourage people to do it.
You got an influencer, they're going to have to take the dare, right?
Yeah.
But it just seems like it's really common knowledge in the culture there. But outside of Yunnan, the strange mushroom is largely an enigma. So there were a lot of accounts about the existence of this mushroom. A lot of people who were looking for it never found the species. And Domnauer is on a quest to solve this decades-old mystery about this fungi species and identify the unknown compound responsible for its unusually similar hallucinations.
And so he can synthesize it and sell it.
I mean, it is really fascinating and unusual for a chemical of any type to give the exact same reaction in everybody.
And it's not only that, it's reported to cause these fairy tale-like visions across cultures and time, which is why Domnauer was perplexed and driven by curiosity to find out more. So there were a few breadcrumbs in the academic literature. In a 1991 paper, 2 researchers from the Chinese Academy of Sciences described cases of people in Yunnan province who had eaten a certain mushroom and experienced, quote, Lilliputian hallucinations, which is fancy talk for I see little people. And of course, that's a reference to the fictional Lilliput Island in the novel Gulliver's Travels. And these patients saw these figures, quote, moving about everywhere. Usually there were more than 10 tiny beings on the scene. They saw them on their clothes when they were dressing, saw them on their dishes when they were eating. Here's what gets me. The visions were even more vivid when their eyes were closed. And then going further back into the 1960s, Gordon Wasson and Roger Heim, the American author and French botanist who brought the existence of psilocybin mushrooms to the attention of Western audiences, they came across something similar in Papua New Guinea. So they were searching for a mushroom that a team of missionaries who visited 30 years prior had said caused the locals to, quote, go insane. A condition the anthropologists later dubbed, quote, mushroom madness. You see that black and white movie right now, right? Now, unbeknownst to them, what they actually encountered sounds really similar to these current reports from China. So they collected specimens of the suspected species, sent them to one Albert Hoffman, aka that Swiss chemist who discovered LSD. But Hoffman failed to identify any molecules of interest. So the team concluded maybe these stories we heard were just cultural tales rather than having any pharmacological basis, because what do they know? They're savages, right? Wasn't until 2015 that researchers formally described and named L. asiatica, but still without a lot of detail about these psychoactive properties. So Dom Nauer's first goal has been to pin down the species' true identity. In 2023, he traveled to Yunnan during peak summertime mushroom season. He surveyed the province's sprawling fungi markets and asked sellers, hey, which of these mushrooms make you see little people? And he would purchase the ones that the giggling vendors would point to. And then he brought them back to the lab to sequence their genomics. And this is what confirmed L. asiatica's identity. In research he is preparing for publication, chemical extracts from lab specimens produced behavioral changes in mice, although I really can't imagine what they were seeing, like extra tiny mice.
Right. Do they see little people or
Like,
do they see little mice?
How can you tell what the mice are? Anyway, this is what they concluded. After administering the mushroom extracts, the mice experienced a period of hyperactivity, followed by a long stupor where the rodents did not move much. But Dom Nauer also visited the Philippines, where he had heard rumors of a mushroom causing similar symptoms. The specimens he collected there looked a little different than the Chinese ones. They were smaller and light pink compared to the bigger, redder Chinese mushrooms, but genetic testing revealed they were indeed the same species. So quite recently, in December 2025, Dom Nauer's supervisor also visited Papua New Guinea to search for the mushrooms from the Wasson and Heim records, whose identity is, quote, still a big question mark. They failed to find any, so the mystery still stands. It could be the same species, which would be surprising because Papua New Guinea typically doesn't share species found in China and the Philippines. Or it could be a different species, which would be, quote, even more interesting from an evolutionary perspective, because it would mean the same Lilliputian effects have evolved independently in different mushroom species in completely different parts of the world. And if this sounds wild, hey, guess what? There is precedent for this happening in nature. Scientists recently discovered that psilocybin, that psychedelic molecule found in magic mushrooms, independently evolved in two distantly related types of mushrooms. But it's not psilocybin that's giving the Lilliputian effect to these asiatica mushrooms. So the team is still trying to identify the chemical compound responsible for those hallucinations. Current tests suggest it's not likely related to any other known psychedelic compound. For one, the trips it produces are unusually long. Are you ready for this? They usually last 1 to 3 days, and that's after an onset of 12 to 24 hours. So,
okay.
Yeah, and in some cases, it can even cause hospital stays of up to a week. So if this was sounding intriguing, maybe this will sober you up a little bit.
Yeah.
That's why Dom Nauer has yet to try the raw mushrooms himself.
Sure he hasn't. I mean, come on.
But these mega trips might help to explain why people in China, the Philippines, and Papua New Guinea do not seem to have a tradition of purposefully seeking out Asiatica mushrooms for psychoactive effects. It was always just eaten for food. But there's also another curious factor at play here. Other known psychedelic compounds, they also usually produce trips that vary not only from person to person, but from one experience to the next. Like one person taking psilocybin today and months from now, they can still have really radically different experiences. But with these Asiatica mushrooms, there's really nothing else that we know of that produces such consistent hallucinations.
Or, hear me out, maybe the little people are real and the mushroom just allows you to see them.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
We didn't believe in ultraviolet until we had the science to see it.
Right, because initially I thought, they're priming them. But then if everybody's having it, they're
Yeah,
little
all across
people.
the world.
Yeah, I mean, what we got to do is we have to map out who these little people are, and then between sessions be like, can you find the guy whose name is Flurple or whatever?
Have you seen Flurple? Because I have a message for him. Yeah.
We'll just need to have like mass hallucinogenic council meeting sessions to foster diplomatic relations with previously unseen little people. What could possibly go wrong?
Right.
Next link. Next link.
This article comes to us from CBS News, and it's titled New Animal Species That Survived Mass Extinction Event Half a Billion Years Ago Found in China. And guess what? It's the little people. No, it's not. That'd be wild. Almost 100 new animal species that survived a mass extinction half a billion years ago have been discovered in China, scientists revealed. The site where the fossils were found in the southern Chinese province of Hunan was extraordinary, Han Zheng of the Chinese Academy of Sciences told AFP. In this small space, the Chinese team uncovered more than 150 different species, 91 of them new to science.
Wow.
Many fossils show soft parts including gills, guts, eyes, and even nerves. There is one photo here of the marine arthropod Fuxian ruide with gut preserved, dating to around 512 million years. And there's a scale bar on it that is 2 millimeters, so this thing is maybe 12 millimeters long. Among the species discovered were ancient relatives of worms, sponges, and jellyfish. They also found many arthropods, a family that includes modern-day crabs and insects, including spiny, stalk-eyed creatures called radiodonts, which were the apex predator of the time. The discovery is particularly exciting for scientists because of the period when these animals lived. Life first emerged on Earth more than 3.5 billion years ago, but was little more than a layer of slime for most of our planet's history. Then came the Cambrian explosion, known as evolution's Big Bang, roughly 540 million years ago. Suddenly, most of the major groups of animals alive today evolved and started populating the world's oceans. This burst of life is thought to have been driven by a rise in oxygen in Earth's atmosphere. However, it came to a sudden end when up to half of all animals died off in a mass extinction known as the Sinks event, which is thought to have been caused by declining oxygen levels. The treasure trove of fossils represent the first major discovery of soft-bodied fossils that lived directly after the Sinks event. Michael Lee, an evolutionary biologist at the South Australian Museum, said the new fossils from China demonstrate that the Sinks event affected shallow water forms most severely. A deep waterfish called a coelacanth similarly survived the mass extinction that wiped out all of the dinosaurs that did not evolve into birds. Yeah, they're really interesting because they're basically fully exactly what they looked like back then. They're also an animal you can fish up in Animal Crossing, which is how I know of them. So Lee told AFP, the deep ocean is one of the most stable environments through geological time in a similar way to how the cellar of a house is buffered from daily and seasonal changes and has less temperature fluctuations than the attic. Han said his team was also surprised that some of the animals had been found at Canada's Burgess Shale site, which dates from an early period of the Cambrian explosion. This suggests that these animals were already able to travel halfway across the world at this early stage.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it gives us hope that we survive our mass extinction events.
Yeah, maybe.
You know?
Well, maybe if we duplicate our genome first.
There you go. Just be a bunch of doppelgangers walking around like conjoined twins waiting for the asteroid.
I mean, I, for one, am ready to be fossilized. Just put me in there.
Right. Just, you can be the message to the future species that take over after we're done.
Yeah, y'all got it from here.
All right, well, that is all we have time for today. We're so glad you've joined us. Some of the articles we did not have time to get to today include Mercury may not be dead after all, this tiny donut almost broke physics in 1986, and the unexpected evolution aboard the ISS. So all that and more, plus everything we talked about today, can be found on damninteresting.com. If you like our podcast and want to support us, you can do so at patreon.com/damninterestingweek. In the meantime, my name is Jennifer Lee Noonan.
I'm Angela Epley.
I'm Spurr-Chen.
I'm Bradley Calhoun.
And we hope you have a damn interesting week. Bye-bye.